You're welcome back. This news file is brought to you by Bank of Africa, MTN, Star Assurance, NIIT, Having Mosquito Coil, ACAP Compost Fertilizer, and White Temple Agency. Now, in the Supreme Court, and I've been saying the contemnors are going back on Monday. No, they're going back on the 27th, isn't it? Yeah. Right. Thank you. And the Supreme Court gave a very interesting judgment that puts, to rest a debate that was resurrected early in the year. First of all, the president appointed the Electoral Commission on the advice of the Council of State. Now, Richard Sky went to the court and sought, and also Kweku Danswe Champong, and sought to get clarity that in the process, the president ought not to have a certain very active role in the process. And the Supreme Court actually just said that in case of Richard Sky, what he was seeking was sort of a bit premature, and that he had not shown any infraction that was committed between the Council of State and the President. He cannot have come to court without any evidence to show that the Council of State didn't do its job, and that is the President that imposed the EC boss. So what Richard Sky needed was purely advice, and that advice is sought from lawyers and not from the Supreme Court. It's not an advisory chamber. Then the other issue is the appointment of justices to the Supreme Court or the Superior Court. The Judicial Council does the vetting and everything, and then in the end will submit a list to the president, and the president will do the appointment. For the Supreme Court, they will go to Parliament for the process to go through as well. Now, the GBA and some members of the GBA went to the court and said that in the appointment of Gabriel Poaman and Yao Apau to the Supreme Court, the list that was submitted to the president was bound by it and did not have any choice anymore about it. The Supreme Court says no. When the list is submitted to the president has the right to decide which persons on the list he wants to appoint. And if he's not even interested in the list, he could just decide not to appoint anybody. Then the process will start all over again, except that the president cannot appoint anybody outside of the list that will be submitted to him. So that suit was also dismissed. Now, in some 1 minute, tell us what your views are about these matters.
Well, thank you very much. I was in court, and I think it's one of the best moments for any lawyer. I mean, it's for me one of the best things about judgment is that it must bring surprise.
Right.
And it's the kind of judgment that even up to the end or getting to the end, you may not know which side was winning. And this is a typical one.
Right.
In fact, until Justice Duche completed the concurring judgment, we're still not very sure who has won and who has lost. But I think that the significant thing really is that at the end of the day, the court has said that the president, and I would say is not absolutely limited by the advice of the Judicial Council. But in a way, he is limited in the sense that if the Judicial Council presents 3 people to the president as the needed to fill in a vacancy, then the president cannot go outside the list,
right,
but to appoint them. It makes sense because if the executive needs 200 people to enable the executive perform the executive function, no one can reduce it. Members of Parliament, we started with 175 or so. Now we have 200. Did we start with 200?
For Fourth Republic, we started with 200.
No, I don't think so.
We started with 200.
Yeah,
started with 200.
Now we have 270. Is it 75 or 70? Yes. And it is by an act of Parliament and constitutional instrument. And when the judiciary needs certain number of people, and especially in view of its administrative, judicial, and any other financial, if you like, independence, then it should not be the power of anybody to determine how many people should be appointed to perform that judicial function. And that is why it makes sense to me that yes, it should be up to the Judicial Council to limit the appointing authority with the specific number of people they want to be appointed.
Okay.
And in that case, then the president cannot go beyond it. But quickly, I think that
he cannot go beyond it, but he may decide not to even consider it.
Well,
So-
but yes,
so
that
they
would
have
mean
to-
that
they have to vet another new
they will
list.
bring another list. But I think in all this, as the court recognize, the Judicial Council is made up of at least 5 people who are related to the president, 4 appointees by the president, in addition to the Attorney General. And so the president or the executive is hugely represented
At the
on the
Judicial
council
Council.
already. So before the person is presented to the president, there should have been consultation between those who are representing
Okay,
the
thank
president. But just quickly, I think that there was a point. I think the suit was not in a way challenging the appointment, the latest appointment.
No, they wanted
Yes.
it for the future.
They just
on the
wanted it
question
for
of
the
what
future.
does advice,
Yes.
on the advice
Yes,
mean?
because I think that has been out there that
Right.
it was purposely to nullify the appointment, the latest appointment to the
Right.
Court of Appeals. That wasn't the case.
Right.
They just sought what we call declaratory reliefs,
Okay.
prospective declaratory reliefs
Thank you.
for the
Thank
future.
you very much. And on the question of the advice, a good friend of mine in Dr. Raymond Atuguba's chambers, Justice Sign, wrote earlier very strongly on this and said advice means advice, period. And there were those of us who felt that he was not exactly right about it. Well, this is where we are. Koku, what do you say?
Well. I was a bit intrigued by the tone of the judgment. I'll be honest with you. So what's advice? Why do we say sometimes in consultation with? Why do we then say advice? So they are not distinguishable? Are they all supposed to mean the same thing? Then the same court says that, look, because advice comes with a list. They are mixed. You can't just advise without a list. That list comes with an advice. Now, the president must stay within the advice. That's what the court said.
Right.
He can't go outside it. There looks as if something mandatory is there. And then the president can still ignore the list.
Yes. This is what they said. They said that
confusing.
if the Judicial Council recommends a particular person and the president does not feel obliged to appoint that person, there is no obligation on the president to have that person appointed. The only thing is that the president can also not go outside the names or list of persons recommended to him by the body.
And there could be a potential situation where you can be bringing list and the president ignoring, and then we keep on going. We might end up with a circus rather than a serious business. So we have to be very careful. Maybe looking forward, we need to do something about this. The vacancies, there are always, sometimes it's vacancies, even
Right.
though I know there's no ceiling as such in terms of the constitution. But we've been working
That's
with
for
the
the Supreme
convention.
Court. Yes.
Yeah, the Supreme Court. I mean.
that's for the Supreme
We've been working with the conventions. It was 13, I think it's moved to somewhere 15, 16 or so. You will know better. No, so that perhaps the Judicial Council should just look at the required number, that the convention, if it's 13 that we are using, dealing with, and the 10, there are only 10 present, and send just 3 names.
Yes.
And let's see what happens. No, otherwise, look,
Thank
we
you.
will reach a situation, we'll go
Thank
in
you.
circles.
Kofi, what do you say?
Intrigued.
Sure, I'll just say that the president indeed did not violate any of these guiding principles that gives him the powers to appoint, and the Supreme Court have so affirmed it. And like we all rightly said, even where the committee's recommendation or the council's recommendation, the president is not satisfied with what he reserves the right to return for some more work to be done. And it is clear. As for the issue of Richie Sky's suit against the appointment of the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, I equally knew that it was dead on arrival, and it's clearly have been also dealt with.
I wrote about that earlier, and I felt I was a bit harsh on him when I wrote and said that it was much ado about nothing, really. And when the parties were clamoring for extensive consultation on the president, I wrote the article that the president should not be tempted to sin, because that consultation was needless. It didn't was not required. Yes, Nana. So
yes,
now this matter is settled.
Well, for me, the list is taken to the Judicial Council. They look at the technical, professional, whatever abilities of the list, and they do a ranking, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and so on. Now, if the president goes beyond the ranking, then the danger is that it risks being a political decision. Even though legally it will be correct, it will risk being a political decision. Why you would sidestep the ranking as has been determined by the larger body, the Judicial Council. For me, that's the only danger. So like we could say, the Judicial Council will then decide that we just limit it to 2. And then if the president says no, then there'll be a stalemate.
All right.
But Samson, there's this interesting thing that Kofi Adams said that I thought
About?
he had decided that Nana Akufo-Addo had lied about something. He didn't tell us what Nana Akufo-Addo had lied about.
Sorry,
one second.
But I need to. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that.
I need to.
When we move on with the subject, when we move on with the subject, it is a closed book. Sorry. On the phone lines, gentlemen, sorry about this.
If you want me to,
please, Kofi, you guys don't do this. Please.
So if he wants, I will.
Please stop it. On the phone lines is Eduzi Tamaklo, Godwin Eduzi Tamaklo. He is one of the lawyers for 2 of the contemnors before the court. Gentlemen, you have to stop this. Now on the phone line, please stop it. On the phone line is Godwin Eduzi Tamaklo. He is one of the lawyers for 2 of the contemnors before the Supreme Court who have been convicted and are supposed to appear before the court for sentencing. Thank you, Godwin, and good morning to you.
Good morning, Sam.
Right.
And Samson, and good morning to your esteemed panelists today.
Great. And Godwin Tamaklo is the guy, the young man who has been winning those victories for Ezanato and keeping Ezanato on the internal ballot for now. Now, thanks for your time, and we just want to make this very quick. We're hoping to speak to one of your guys, but we understand that we can only speak to you for now. Tell us what's going on in their minds as they get ready for the sentencing. Look, I put up a post on my wall and I said people should understand that conviction in itself is such a punishment, and that those who are shouting and calling for them to be sentenced with jail terms ought to take it easy. Guess what? The majority of the people who came on my wall were against me for seeking to preach that they should not be jailed. What's going on in their minds as they get ready for the sentencing?
Samson, once again, thank you. As you are aware, they have been convicted. You know that once conviction is pronounced on you, it becomes more like a sword that will hang on you for the rest of your life, unless you have taken steps to either appeal or have that conviction set aside. Unfortunately, in the case of my clients, they are in the Supreme Court. It's the Supreme Court that has convicted them. The procedure is such that it's a bit uncertain whether you can appeal or go for review. So you can imagine the challenge that we already face with my clients. So what we are basically doing is that already the conviction is enough punishment on them, including the owners of the frequency and the station. That's already a huge burden on them. So again, like we've indicated to the courts, we are expressing our apology sincerely, particularly to the Chief Justice, Justice Badegbe, whose name was specifically mentioned in the comments made by my clients. What we also want to do quickly, and we have indicated earlier, we have retracted those statements and we do not wish to repeat them, either using this medium or any other medium. As you saw in court the last time, we even resisted the playing of those audio recordings because we felt that the words on those recordings should not be repeated anywhere.
Right.
And we will not want to be part of that process.
Right.
So we are continuing in this supplication to their lordships, Justice Benin, Justice Obakupo, Julius Ansan, His Lordship Justice Eli Yeboah, His Lordship Justice Puaman, and the other Lord Justices, and the whole judiciary, that we are sincerely sorry for this. We are also aware that my clients are essentially persons who have never had any brush with the law. They have never in their life have any brush with the law. They are typically persons that you describe as first-time offenders who, through unguided commentary from them, have landed them in this position.
Okay.
So
for example, when I put my post on, I said that some criminal convictions have serious implications, including disqualifying one from aspiring to be MP or president or lawyer or member of a board, etc., or such convictions serve as grounds for removal from such jobs or professions. And then I said tamper justice with mercy where genuine repentance is seen. Then I said stop asking for jail. Now a question that Sechofi asked was that, do you sense genuine repentance? Judges must begin to set scapegoats to deter others from such hateful utterances, and such messages are replete in this. Would you say, what would you tell those who say the repentance sort of is not genuine?
You know, in the case particularly of Mr. Alistair Nelson, if you recall, the very moment the GBA came out with their statement, drawing their attention to how dangerous and threatening those comments
he issued an apology.
He, without reservation, proceeded to render unqualified apology to their lordships. And immediately retracted those statements. Obviously, somebody who is not genuine with it would have insisted and said, look, you know what I said, I have every right, I'm entitled as a citizen of this country. No, he said he is sorry, and that relative to the time, the circumstance in which those comments were made, it was in bad taste, and that he was minded not to repeat those comments again. I think that those who are making the point that it's not genuine have not provided any other, proof of this claim beyond the fact that it should be deterrent. Our position is this: the conviction already is deterrent enough, and like you have said, the disabilities associated with conviction are so many. Can you imagine today you put in an application for job and the person says, we want to see your record. Have you ever had any brush with the law? And even when you are applying for visa and all of those issues, they will ask questions whether or not you have been convicted before. These are enough disabilities that have come that we think, and is our prayer before their lordships, that there is no further need of adding imprisonment, which borders more on curtailing their liberties. My clients, in the presence of Akoka and Alistair, they are already under what you call BNI invitation. Twice every week they already go there and others. The pressure on family members and others is enormous, and is our prayer, a continuous prayer, that we should allow or temper mercy for justice. And something quickly, as your show is, your producer together with yourself just called me. I can imagine if it has to do with a case that you needed to consult with the owner of the station before you get to this point, it would have been extremely difficult. So in respect of the, yes. And you see, I have maintained that this conviction by their lordship has far-reaching consequence. You see, as a producer of a show, you can never be certain what the person you are inviting on your show within a twinkle of an eye, possibly possessed by probably will say.
All right,
So
I think we can end it there. Thank you very much, Godwin.
We are just playing.
Thank you. Godwin Eduzi Tamaklo is one of the lawyers, together with Judge Lowe, his senior. They are the ones who are in the Supreme Court and praying and pleading with their lords to temper justice with mercy, and to also say that the conviction is enough if they could hold it on there and not further put them in prison. Thank you very much for your time once again. Now, Kwaku's views we already know. He says non-custodial. But what do you say to those who say if this goes without custodial, it might not do the magic it is intended to do? And if you were in court, you would have heard Justice Benin. He said, look, I listen to radio a lot. That's the judge speaking. And he says sometimes he gets very disturbed where we are heading to as a nation, because he hears people on radio insulting rather than dealing with issues.
That's right.
They are insulting the president, they are insulting opposition leaders, they are insulting chiefs, they are insulting people who have earned a certain position in the country by virtue of certain honor that we are doing them because they are people of some good reputation. And I added that sometimes you check the backgrounds of those who are doing the insults, and they may not have even finished their SSS, and they're insulting people who have accomplished in life.
Right.
So he's very worried. Do you find that that is a tone, a signal that they will not end at the conviction?
Well, I mean, it is well known that even the devil does not know the intent of man. So I may not be able to say with certainty what they intend doing. But I would say that this situation is not something that you may even wish your avowed enemy to go through. Even the 1 week situation, the conviction, you wake up at dawn and you ask yourself, what is tomorrow's date? I mean, it is terrible enough. Again, I'm not very sure that custodial sentences, imprisonment, has ever achieved the purpose of deterrence.
Right.
Because after all, just in 2013, some people were convicted and imprisoned for this same or similar cases like this.
Right.
And yet, it's even worse on the so-called social media. So the custodial sentence may not achieve the deterrence that we are all looking for. But I think that one thing that comes out, it may not be legal for me, is the realization that we have personal responsibility for what we do or say, even if we are working for others. I looked at, with all due respect, and I said it with pain, I looked at the affidavit that the directors and the owners filed. And you see, these are people of substance.
Right.
I mean, I live at Cantonment, I live at McCarthy Hill, I live at Trasako. And then you, an individual who has been employed, you think that you are doing the bidding of those who have employed you. No, you are on your own. There is no vicarious liability for the commission of a criminal offense. So that you say that I'm only an agent, so punish my boss. If anything at all, you will both be severally punishable in terms of what you do. So the so-called the youth and all that who think that you have been employed by people to do a specific job of destroying others, I think this is an example where you go into the box alone. If your boss is called, he also goes there alone. He will not substitute you. And that's the lesson I think we should learn from it. I might go with what you said. I think that the conviction is serious enough. And therefore, probably, we have seen some diminution of this sort of unwholesome behavior ever since, especially this matter came up. But like the presidential election time, immediately everybody was sober, and just before long, people went back to even worse situations. I hope that this should be, and especially where the owners and the directors have also been drawn in. I mean, these are men of substance who, and it goes to show that when you are benefiting from the act of another, because if you're a shareholder, the adverts and so on will near to your benefit. Ask yourself, what is the source of this benefit? Is it worth the distraction of other people's reputation? And if it's not, you have the power to dismiss the person, caution them, tell them to fashion out a better program and vision and mission, other than what you may have originally thought would have been the best vision for you, and has turned out to be an evil vision.
Thank you very much. And Kakubako has been advocating for non-custodial sentence, and I've also been reading from the Association of Magistrates and Judges of Ghana, their journal, which is the 7th edition, October 2015, and there are two interesting articles, one by Sir Justice Dennis J. and one by Justice Wilson. Now, Sir Justice Dennis J. concludes his long article, which exposes on everything you need to know about contempt. And he ends on a very interesting note where he quotes from a case where he says, justice is not a cloistered virtue. She must be allowed to suffer the scrutiny and respectful, even though outspoken comments of the ordinary men. This goes to enforce what the Supreme Court has said earlier, that they can be criticized no matter how violent the criticism is. Yes, you read, and just briefly, I Speak for Freedom, which is Kabla Ble Amehe, and he makes certain points. He says, but for all the mistakes, linguistics, and even factual atrocities that the press may commit, it is better to have a bad but free press than a good but muzzled press. A muzzled press can never be good. It is only a free press that has the potential to become good. He says, in order to enjoy the inestimable benefits that the liberty of the press ensures, it is necessary to submit to the inevitable evils that it creates. Now, Kweku, is it your advocacy that they've already been convicted? If they are sentenced, this is going to cower the media?
Not in exact terms. It's a very sentimental thing I'm pushing forward, the non-custodial thing. You know, it's interesting you read Cabra before asking me to comment. He's my professional mentor when it comes to who I am today in terms of journalism. And I get his drift. That's where I am. I have said, look, no matter what happens, we need not generate a culture of cowardice in our democratic polity. We had a huge, long fight to get the criminal and seditious libel regimes repealed. It was for good reasons. We fought a long, protracted fight against the culture of silence and the regime of fear. We are here today because of those sacrifices. It's true, infractions. The Constitution identifies infractions that could be punished. This is one, even though I have a problem with that animal called contempt. Short of custodial sentence, there are broad range of other sanctions. Fine, caution, the bond of good behavior, or a combination of all those things, dependent of the discretion of the court.
Right.
So it's just a plea. It's a sentimental thing that one is making. But there's one observation I want to make. You are the lawyers, so perhaps you people can cure my difficulty. I am not too sure that if you are convicted for contempt, I'm an example, because it's quasi-criminal, it leads to a question of eligibility to public office.
No, it doesn't. It does not.
Thank you.
If you are convicted on
Thank you.
matters of dishonesty,
yes.
Yeah. No, sometimes he uses the moral turpitude.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, I wanted that clear because I've gone through that experience before.
Okay.
I remember 2000. I'd gone to the British embassy to get a visa done, and there was this question about whether you've been convicted before or not.
Okay.
I was in a dilemma temporarily. So I went to the officer in charge and I told him that, look, I'm a convict relative to contempt.
Right.
What do I put here? He looked at it, he said, what kind of conviction was that? When I explained, he said, ignore it.
Okay,
so he didn't even make me state
maybe
it.
we have to be careful what the court's view is. This is strictly criminal contempt. Now, if it is strictly criminal contempt, then what will it amount to? I don't want to give any judgment on
is contempt more than quasi criminal?
There is clearly criminal contempt provided for under the criminal offences acts.
Okay,
from section 222 up to section 225 or thereabouts.
Interesting.
Now,
and this criminal contempt, who does it apply to?
I don't want to go there. I just want, because of where it is getting to, I don't want to make a pronouncement that will sound as if. Okay, so
you don't want to educate us.
Now,
dangerous education.
Sorry, Nana. There are those who say, if this is not punished with custodial sentence and things like that, even if it has to be fine, the fine ought to be hefty. Well, if it is hefty and they are not able to pay, the default is that you go to jail.
Yeah.
There are those who say, if that doesn't happen, this will send a bad signal.
Yes, it could. Because, you see, the matter that we are dealing with doesn't seem to be a regular matter. Now, there are many radio stations in this country. Some of them have been set up for public good and also for commercial interest. Many of them. Some of them have even been set up for political purposes. I mean, you have the Gold, Radio Gold, you have the Oman FMs with a clear political bias. But they all operate largely within the ethics. This radio station called Monite FM seems to have been set up with a particular agenda to engage in insults and libel. And when you track their programming on that afternoon show they call Pump Up, so you would see it very clearly. Egregious insults against people that they perceive have done something against their own interest. One time, Harry Zakor, who's the vice chairman of the NDC, came out and told us, yes, the radio station had been set up with a purpose, because he believed that some other radio station, I think he mentioned Peace FM, had been set up with a certain purpose, and so he is going to set up Monite to counter it. So I'm surprised when he went to the court, he was limiting his involvement to only the ownership of a frequency, when he had told us in public that he set it up to pursue this agenda. So something, you see that there's a clear agenda. Now, if anybody makes a mistake and they apologize, I mean, we are all human beings. We are likely to make mistakes once in a while.
Right.
So really, that should have been the main point, that they've shown remorse. But look at what the host of the program said.
Don't repeat it.
I'm not going to repeat.
Yeah.
Even after, I'm not going to repeat but what the host said, even after the warrant has been issued.
It was played back to him in court,
yes.
And he said he's sorry.
Well,
he's sorry.
Well, so when you look at the attitude, even after the warrant had been issued, you still have people going ahead to say the things that the host said and actually trying to ascribe motives to the Supreme Court and alluding to his ethnic origin and so on. And so it becomes difficult to even accept any ameliorating circumstances.
Okay.
But the Supreme Court knows best in this matter. Let's see how
the Media Foundation for West Africa has issued its latest abusive language on radio report, and in that report, somehow this time the parties, normally it's either NDC or MPP, that is topping the list of those who use most abusive language. This time around, it's the host of that show, and they recorded
but
quite.
NDC also topped.
Yes,
according to the report.
Yes, quite a number of things that were done, a huge percentage of what they recorded, they have ascribed to that particular station. Now,
I should look at myself.
the worrying development about language, particularly with political parties, and one of your officers, Kofi Adams, has said that when these people speak, yes, when these people speak, it's wrong to attribute what they say directly to the party. And I think the worry is about some of the things that, for example, Charles A.J. Wilson, the judge right here, talks about language that includes subversive advocacy, hate speech, fighting words, obscenity, defamation, and contempt of court, and so on and so forth. How do you speak to these people who speak to you? Do you do that at all so that they avoid these pitfalls?
Thank you. I'm not here to go and analyze who is doing what, and I'm
that's why I said let's move on.
Wanted to compare what goes on at the mind with this. I don't think that they compare in any way. But moving on, when you give birth to a child, you train the child, you bring the child up, you want the child to do the best of things. If in the course of development that child commits a crime, would you conclude by saying that because the child has committed a crime, so the father is also liable or did not do any training? No, that's not the case. We all go through some kind of training, but as we communicate, there are times we may fall short. And I want us to look at this occurrence, especially to do with these three persons, from the point of the regret and the remorse they have shown.
Right.
And for us to at least, they've already been convicted. And for me, the 7+ days wait to know what will happen is even more a punishment. It's like being asked to go and do a particular test and you are waiting for the results. Before you went to the lab, you are very okay. Then when they take the sample and you are waiting for...
Because that's duly acknowledged. But my question to you was, the people who speak for you, the parties, do you talk to them?
And I'm saying we engage them in training. We build capacity. We provide information. Regularly, releases are done. So that when you go, you speak to a certain information. But sometimes the personal things, please, you speak to facts. Sometimes the personal things also come in. Like somebody say, Popo will set in, or Beshi will set in, and then the Beshi takes over the facts. Such things happen. When they do happen, yes, we can give some punishment to correct, but the punishment should not be such that it ends up also creating problems. And that is where I join many who are pleading that the conviction, I think, is enough punishment. These gentlemen could be asked to go home and continue drinking their light soup and then eating their kenke and then bankung after the 27th. I really join those who are pleading for some kind of mercy on this occasion, because they've been... But political parties will continue to train our persons, to educate them, and to make information available to them. Our manifestos, regular write-ups. We in NDC have established a school we train, we take communicators and others through training.
We run out of time there.